Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielson and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lock Shop. Nielson and Hustler with you here on a Tuesday morning. We'll have another episode on Friday, giving you all of our picks for the weekend in the National Football League, where we got some PGA Tour action, we got NHL action. Take a little look at some NFL playoff futures as well. Lock Shop, as always, brought to you by our friends at Coolbet. Sign up for an account today at coolbet.com. Use the bonus code LOCKSHOP, all one word, and you'll get a 100% deposit bonus on that initial deposit up to $200. Some time to maybe bet on some NFL playoffs still, or dive into some NHL betting, some puck lines and things like that as well. Huss, Sunday was a weird day, wasn't it, in the National Football League?
Dude, that was the craziest week 18. And it was so crazy because, I mean, most listeners and viewers know I'm a huge Chiefs guy. Chiefs played on Saturday, so didn't even have my team playing. Mercifully, the fantasy season was over in week 17. And as I mentioned on my show yesterday, if you are in a fantasy league that includes week 18 as part of your championship weekend, you need to wring your commissioner's neck.
Yeah, you can't do that.
It's just, it destroyed. This season was already screwed up enough. Never mind going down to week 18 for that. So without a lot of fantasy implications, with the Chiefs already being in the clubhouse, it was just one of those days to sit back and watch the games. And I mean, it was so bananas. We had overtime in the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game. We had overtime, and maybe the most impressive performance of the day, the comeback of the 49ers against the Rams in the late afternoon game.
That was great.
And I mean, we could probably do 2 hours just on the Charger Raider game alone. It was a crazy, I kind of went into week 18 thinking I'm still don't know whether I'm really on board with this expanded playoff. The only thing we're really getting out of this is the Steelers and the Eagles getting thrown to the Wolves in week number 1, and the Chiefs and Buccaneers don't get a bye. But I got to tell you, for the drama, the intrigue, again, sometimes I do believe the NFL is more rigged than the WWE for entertainment purposes.
It sure looked like it.
Actually true, but oh my God. If you're a Charger fan right now, I don't think you've recovered from what happened on Sunday night. And my God, if you're a Colts fan, which maybe started this entire crazy, we're probably talking about it being the dullest week 18 or last week of the season ever if the Colts just take care of business. But the Jags did what they did. And it was
How do you lose to the Jags with a playoff spot on the line? I will never understand that.
Dude, they didn't just lose.
They got crushed.
Got the shit kicked out of them by a 2-14 team in a win and in. Listen, the Chargers and the Colts have nobody to blame but themselves. The Chargers should have never been in that situation to begin with. They gave up 41 to the Houston Texans and lost to Houston in an incredibly important game a couple weeks ago. And the Colts lost at home to the Raiders and then went in and with their season on the line, lost to the 2-14 Jags. So I will tell you this, though. Other AFC teams, and certainly I say this sort of being as a supporter of the number 2 seed Chiefs, very happy that both the Colts and the Chargers are not part of the playoff dance, because as inconsistent as they are, when they're playing well, those teams can be a serious problem. And I'll tell you what, Justin Herbert was so nails on those 4th downs in the game. I mean, he's a guy. It's incredible they are not playing right now with the performance. I mean, they converted on 4th and 22, 4th and 10, 4th and 10, 4th and 10. That drive, Dusty, that drive was like a minute 43 or a minute 50. It was a 19-play drive. I've never seen anything like it.
It was incredible. I feel raw. I mean, I would have loved to have seen Herbert in the playoffs. He's going to be there for a lot of it. I mean, if you can't build a Super Bowl champion around Justin Herbert, you can't build a Super Bowl champion. I'm not talking this year, but I'm talking like over the course of the next 5 to 7 years, that dude's got to win one. I mean, he's got all the talent in the world.
George, start with getting out of the AFC West first.
Yeah.
Before we
That's a good point. You're right.
Mahomes is now 13-0 lifetime on the road in the division. So
wow. That's pretty impressive.
Andy Reid, the job that he's done there, you know, there's all these things about, you know, where were you 10 years ago? You know, these things on social media, just so people can, I don't know, post pictures of themselves 10 years younger.
Yeah, the 10-year challenge.
Yeah, 10-year challenge. We had freaking Matt Castle and Pioli and Todd Haley, and now it's Mahomes and Andy Reid. So, I mean, hey, the Chargers have a ton of talent. And I know there's tons of talk about the timeout. To me, the timeout, whatever about the timeout. It was the fact that after the timeout, which was called because they wanted to have their proper run defense in, they still gave up a first down to Josh Jacobs and put them comfortably in field goal range. I mean, that was the most indefensible thing. And Staley's defensive guy. I mean, we make a lot about the decisions that he makes. And I got to say, going forward on 4th and 2 from your own 18.
What were they thinking?
Of a 3-point game. I mean, you were down 3 touchdowns. Even if you were down 3 touchdowns, I don't know if that's the right call. But listen, their inability to stop the run with their season on the line is the reason why the Raiders even decided to take that chance and kick the field goal. But yeah, Big Ben retirement night, Sunday night at Arrowhead. Looking forward to it.
You know what? Just because we're with the NFL right now, let's stick with it. And just we're going to have a full weekend preview, obviously, on Friday's episode with picks, 6 games. We'll pick them all. We'll let you know exactly our thoughts on all of those games. We'll certainly dive into it. But when you just look at AFC and NFC conference winners right now, let me just run you through the numbers. In the AFC, KC plus 200, the Bills plus 275. The Titans, who don't even have to play this week, are plus 330. The Pats plus 900, Bengals plus 900. Then the long shots, the Raiders at 25-1, the Steelers at 35-1. And over on the NFC side of things, Packers plus 175, Bucks plus 365, Rams plus 450, the Dallas Cowboys at plus 600, the Niners at plus 1,000, the Cardinals 12-1, and the Eagles at 27-1. I'll tell you, I'd have time for a Packers-Chiefs Super Bowl. That would be amazing. I mean, they're the 2 favorites right now. But Huss, does anything stand out to you when we look at these numbers?
Well, you know, it's interesting that the Chiefs are the favorite that they are, despite not having the first seed. I mean, Derrick Henry's coming back. The Titans, the thing is, the Titans have been great against some good teams this year. They've also lost some games that they had no business losing. And I mean, not very many people watched the Tennessee-Houston game, which was 21-0 at halftime and ostensibly over. They had to sweat that out, and they won by 3 points. So I really don't know about the Titans, but that's number 1 seed in the bye is so huge. Sort of surprised that they are a lower number than the Buffalo Bills. Packers certainly should be the clear favorite, I think, in the NFC right now. And you're right, we might get that Mahomes-Rodgers matchup that we missed this regular season because of Aaron Rodgers with the COVID and the fiasco that followed with him being immunized and all that stuff. The one number that sticks out to me is the Niners at 10-1.
That's what I was going to say. That was the one that I was going to say, buddy.
Dude, they are such a problem when they're running the football the way they were. And I know we'll talk about it more on Friday, but I mean, that game was just about over. 17-0. McVay 45-0 and leading at halftime. They were up by 14 at the half. But man, that field goal that San Francisco got right at the end, they got the ball back, went down, scored a touchdown. And all of a sudden that 17-0 lead was 17-10 the next time Matt Stafford got his hands on the football. And I don't want to say the Rams are frauds, although a couple times they have looked that way this year in big games, those primetime games that we talked about before. But Kyle Shanahan owns Sean McVay. I mean, they are 6-0 now in the last 3 years against this team. And you know what? Running the football is real important when it comes to the playoffs. And, you know, you add in the way that Shanahan uses Deebo Samuel as both a receiver and a running back.
Deadly.
And you know what? Credit where credit is due. Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy came up big. I don't know whether he's going to be able to do that for 4 straight games, but I'll tell you what, if I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan right now, I am very nervous about this game coming up on the weekend because as talented as the Cowboys are, the Niners are coming in, and I don't want to say they're playing with house money, but they're going to be a real, real tough out. And I'll tell you what, from the Packers standpoint, the one thing that concerns me about Green Bay is their run defense. A lot of these other teams won't scare Green Bay at all. I think the 49ers will. A lot of it's going to end up on Jimmy Garoppolo, whether he can get the job done. But I mean, and certainly it's not a game plan to go down 17-0 in a game where you have to win. But man, what they showed in the second half, I think they've got the most momentum going into the playoffs coming out of week 18. It'll be interesting. I'm certainly thinking long and hard about picking the Niners in that game against the Dallas Cowboys on the weekend. And I think if they get that one win, they are going to be a problem for whoever they play in the NFC. As far as the AFC goes, obviously, I'm very biased in this. I do like the Chiefs. I think they've got the pedigree. But the Bengals, I still think back at what the Bengals did going toe to toe. Joey Burrow. This is a big game player. He showed it in spades in week 17 when they beat the Chiefs in the way that they did. We know what he's done at LSU. We know what he did in the national championship game. So when we get out there and see what the Bengals are doing, that's going to be, let's assume that they get past the Raiders in the Saturday afternoon game. If the top seeds win, I guess we'll have Buffalo and the Chiefs and the Bengals going up against the Titans. But as I said, we'll see what happens on the defensive side of the football, but Cincinnati's going to score some points. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But the one number, if you just said, hey, here's $20, give me the best value on the board right now, I think I'm looking at San Fran at 10-1.
Yeah, I think I'd probably agree with you. That was what I was going to say as well. Cardinals 12-1, Eagles don't like their chances. Pittsburgh, come on. It is the most Pittsburgh Steelers thing for them to get into the playoffs again by, win one, lose one, win one, lose one, win one, get some help along the way, make the postseason. But, for Roethlisberger to be sitting there watching that game thinking, well, if this game ends in a tie, I never play in the NFL again. If they don't, I get to go in and try to upset the Chiefs next week. What a weird spot to be in, buddy.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, listen, I have a feeling that Monday morning they might be wishing that game ended in a tie. What was this? Well, okay, listen, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, and I know we'll get into this, but this has the potential of being an ugly, ugly game for Pittsburgh. And I think about Dan Marino. You remember his final game in the National Football League playoff game against the Jags? They lost. I believe the final score was 63-7. I put it this way. I've thought about that game a couple times once I saw what's happening right now. And I'll watch the Steelers go in and shock the world and win the game. We'll see what happens. But hey, you know what? Chip in a chair is what they say. And the Steelers are at least at the table, something you can't say for the Chargers or the Colts, incredibly.
We're going to take a look at some plays for the NHL tonight, the games that haven't been postponed, of course, and some picks for the Sony Open coming up as well. But, Huss, you managed to cash last night, and you got to bet against Nick Saban in cash. So it was best of both worlds for you.
Oh, man, this felt like the good old days, getting that odd win against the Patriots in the Brady and Belichick era. Yeah, you know what? And I went back and realized that, we picked, I had the Georgia and the under 52. And man, these odds makers are good. We ended up squeaking by 1 point last night on it. But what a heck of a football game. And that was all about defense. Kind of amazing, to be honest, that the total got as high as it was, considering it was 9-6 well into the third quarter. But man, the SEC is just so good. It's almost like they're playing a different level of football than everybody else, minus a couple teams in college football. But Bama is the Death Star. Nick Saban is Darth Vader, and some young Jedis wearing Bulldogs uniforms got it done last night. It'd be interesting to see. We'll go back and look at this game in 2 or 3 years, and I will bet that about 80% of the players on the line of scrimmage are on NFL rosters at that time. That was as close to a professional level performance of the defensive line of Georgia. And, credit to the Bama line as well. They made things miserable at times for Stetson Bennett the Fourth. What a name, by the way. That's ultimate SEC stuff. So anyways, I enjoyed the game. It was fun to have something to watch last night.
That was nice.
But as I say, I just love to see something different. Bama's in the game each and every year. Last 3 years, it was the same matchup, Clemson, Bama. Now Georgia finally broke through. But a win for Georgia, I think, is good for a lot of other programs and some interest in it. But bottom line was, it was nice to get a winner because I finished the season betting on the lock shop like the Colts did in the regular season. I shit the bed in week 17 and then maybe was even worse in week 18. Now, unlike the Colts, I will be here for the playoffs. So I'm looking to turn it around on Friday.
The real bounce back in the postseason. I ended up settling on Alabama +3 and over 48.5. So I bought some points, brought it down. So up until that pick 6, I was just sitting there going, okay, Bama drives the field, scores, I'm laughing. And then Young throws that pick 6, and I was like, you bastard, you killed me here. But I was still breathing late in that game. But he killed me. Georgia just made big plays, right? Like they didn't dominate, but they made 4 or 5 big plays in that game that were the difference, and Alabama just didn't make those plays. It was simple as that, cut and dry. That's how it went down.
Yeah, well, listen, Bennett, after losing that fumble, giving Bama on the ball and inside the 10-yard line or whatever that was, to come back with those 2 touchdowns the way it is. I mean, I didn't know a lot about him beforehand other than just he had a the name that you would either have from like a judge. I think Chris Abbott said it was either a Lord or a WWE jobber from the mid 80s. Yeah. But he's got a pretty interesting story, a walk-on kid that, was always down the depth chart and got it done. I don't think he projects to be a pro like many of his teammates do, but
he's on the Riders neg list. Do you know that?
Well, Riders, there he is.
Riders neg list.
Well, perfect. Listen, I did bet on him. I would welcome him coming to the Canadian Football League and taking the chance to bet against him in the green and white for the Riders.
There you go.
Coming up next season.
All right. You are watching The Lock Shop. If you're listening to the podcast a little bit later on, you are listening to The Lock Shop. Or if you're just watching, but you have your eyes closed, I guess you would be listening to The Lock Shop as well. Subscribe to the podcast today. Search Lock Shop on all your podcasting platforms. We haven't been so heavy at just the one episode the last couple of weeks on the NFL. We haven't talked NHL in a little while, Huss, but we got some games that we like tonight, parlaying them up for a pretty decent number if you want to do the parlay. But where are you looking? Who are you looking at here?
Well, first off, to our defense, it's not just we just decided to slack for 3 weeks. We didn't have any golf, and there were no damn hockey games to pick. And I'll be honest, even with these picks right now, and I'm going through them last night so we can get them ready for the graphics to do the program. And I'm like, I might put a small amount on the parlay right now, but I will be waiting to actually bet these games until we get closer to game time, because who the hell knows who's playing, who's out right now. It really is a nightmare. And certainly here in Winnipeg, we just found another 4 guys on the list today. We'll see whether that game actually happens in Detroit on Wednesday. But it is a mess right now. But looking at the games, I kind of centered in on 3. The Leafs at Vegas. I got a chance to see Vegas. They're still dealing with a number of players out. They did get Robin Lehner back. I believe Stone's back in the lineup. But I do like the Leafs on the money line in this game. I think they sort of felt like they gave away a point against the Avalanche on Saturday night, which was a hell of a fun hockey game. If they weren't going to have many games, that was a great one to have on television. Really enjoyed that, especially having the Avalanche side of things and seeing the way that they came back on it. But I do think that the Leafs, they're playing very well. They're a high-octane team. And I think right now with the guys that are still out of Vegas's lineup, I don't mind taking them, at -105, just about even money on the money line. Then I went to Vancouver, and it was interesting last night, looking at the games that were out there. They had both the three-way, the three-way numbers. I'm like, you know what? Listen, I know the Bruce Boudreau story's been amazing. But at a certain point, you get the law of diminishing returns. They finally lost a game to the Kings, and now I think they're stepping up a weight class against one of the NHL's best in the Florida Panthers. So there's not a lot of value, I think, to bet the Panthers in the money line. It's -217, but you can get them at -130, -135 to win in regulation. So I got the Panthers in at reg. And then, the Pittsburgh Penguins against the Anaheim Ducks. And I think just on paper, Pittsburgh is a better team than Anaheim, although full credit to Dallas Eakins for what he's done so far with this club. But Pittsburgh, when you look at what they have been doing as of late, they are really playing some good hockey, and they've been beating some good teams. They put up 8 against the Sharks. They put up 5 against the Blues in their win at home. They crushed the Flyers 6-2. And then are coming off a loss against the Dallas Stars 3-2, for this road trip. So I think that they go into Anaheim. It's a team that, still has a pretty good record when it comes to a home ice. They're 12-5-4 at home. I just think that Pittsburgh's rolling right now. These points are very important, and I think that they get it done. So I didn't mind the minus 152 on the road at Anaheim. So those are the three games I like. As I said, I'm going to make sure nothing goes south on all of them or on any of them before betting them individually closer to game time. But I did get in on a parlay last night at plus 437 for those three picks, but I'll probably hit them individually as well.
As Huss said, you want to probably wait last minute here before you make any of these bets on the National Hockey League right now with the times that we are currently in. Tampa Bay in regulation, Vasilevsky starting, minus 147 for Tampa in regulation. That's a parlay type play that I would look at against Buffalo. I'm with you on Pittsburgh in the money line at minus 152 against Anaheim. I think the game to watch tonight's Colorado at Nashville tonight. UC Saros has been lights out. Colorado played last night. I believe they'll have Kemper ready to go tonight. Colorado's been, they've won 5 in a row. They're 9-1 in their last 10. Nashville, I think, has won 4 in a row and are 8-1-1 in their last 10. They sit at the top of the division. Colorado has games in hand, better point percentage, better team. I understand all that. For parlay purposes, I'm just going to put Nashville in here at plus 1.5 at minus 196, which would bring my parlay up to plus 321. But as far as individual game betting goes, I might sprinkle Nashville here as a dog at home. Colorado been rolling lately, but in their second half of a back-to-back against a Nashville team that might be looking at it going, hey, we're at the top of the standings right now, but everybody knows Colorado's the best team. They played twice this year. I think Colorado won by 3 or 4 in the first game. Nashville won 5-2 in the second game. So I don't mind this spot here for the Preds as a dog. I think last night it was plus 132 or something as a home underdog against the Colorado Avalanche. So if you're going to parlay it, probably just go plus 1.5 at minus 196. But I like to see I think Nashville brings something to the table tonight against Colorado.
It's funny you bring this up. I was looking at this game and I was thinking about doing the same thing, just saying, screw it. We're going to take Nashville at home, Avs on the second end of a back-to-back. And then at this point, when I was looking at it, the Avs were down 3-2 in Seattle going into the third period. What I really regret, though, is not jumping on the Avs. I think were plus 330 to win that game in regulation last night. So they ended up doing it with 5 minutes left. They were up in the game. So it was a bit of a missed opportunity. And I do sort of think that maybe human nature, although it's a big game, the fact that they're traveling from Seattle to Nashville, having won last night, if they had lost to Seattle, I think they would have been more likely to have a real big bounce back game. But I think it's a great opportunity for Nashville, to your point. So I hadn't touched that game. I didn't put it in with the picks because, again, that game was still going on. But the fact that Colorado did win, I'm kind of with you. I think there is some value on the Preds, even though the jury is still out on that club. I know Matt Duchene and Johansson have had some points so far this year, which is nice that they finally showed up in year 4 of those 8-year contracts, because frankly, they've been stealing money for the last few seasons. Hey, if they get that sort of performance from their top 2 centers, the Preds are absolutely in the mix in the Central Division, and credit to them for the job that they've done so far this year. It's just weird. We were hoping to see them right before Christmas. Didn't have a chance. That was one of those games that was postponed. So I don't know. I'm still in I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it mode, but they're doing it right now. So credit to them. And as I said, I think there might be a good argument to back the Preds as a home underdog tonight with the Avs traveling from Seattle after last night's win over the Kraken.
Nielsen and Hustler with you here on The Lock Shop. And as I said, we haven't really had golf to bet that often over the last little while, but it's back, baby. Sony Open, let's go.
Oh, it is so back. And by the way, shout out to my guy Cam Smith last week. The Tournament Champions is such a weird event. I mean, it's a small field, everybody plays. I did just for fun to start off the season, put a little sprinkle on my guy Tony Finau. But if you recall last year, you go back over the course of our entire year, the 2 guys I bet the most, Finau and Cam Smith. So I'm sort of kicking myself for not jumping on it. All-time PGA Tour record for scoring, minus 34. And Who was it that shot? Let's see, I've got it right here. I've got it. You got to feel bad for Matt Jones, who closes 62-61 and still finishes third in the tournament behind John Rahm and Cam Smith. But listen, here's the deal with the Sony Open. This is it's at Wailea Country Club. It is a course that traditionally sort of nullifies the big advantages of the long hitters on tour. And that's why you see this is a spot where you're looking at par 4 scoring, particularly driving accuracy, approach, always very important, and certainly the short game. So I think it gives us some opportunities to maybe pick some guys at, be it lower numbers. And the odds took a big dip for everybody when Bryson DeChambeau, who certainly would have been the favorite going in. By the way, he's out. Did you see the PGA Tour release? Bryson DeChambeau will not be playing this week due to a wrist injury. Just insert your jokes there. I mean, you can go for it. But anyways, based on all of that, when you go back to the history at this course, Webb Simpson's the guy that jumps out first. Cam Smith's, by the way, the favorite at 10-1. I mean, I love Cam. He's playing great. I just think the number's too short to jump on him again. But Webb Simpson historically has been so good at this course. It is the perfect Webb Simpson track where, accurate, good short game, putting, all of those things. You don't need to hit it 360 off the tee to be hanging with everyone else. And he hasn't won yet before. I think he's got 3 top 3s here. So, I mean, 16-1. I like Webb Simpson. He's my chalkiest pick. Then I'm going to go with Kevin Knott. Knott is the defending champion of this event. And, finished up pretty well at the Century on the weekend. He, of course, had a win, so he was in that event. And he ended up finishing tied for 13th. A pretty steady 67 and then 368s. And he's a guy, I mean, his profile is based on some of these shorter courses. And then it really came down. I'm glad you've got Corey Connors because he was a guy that I talked about. Did some reading. Denny McCarthy is a guy at 79-1 that has a lot of the numbers that sort of, work out. Now, you might want to take a flyer on an outright, but maybe looking at a top 10 or top 20 for him was a guy that I thought about. But I mean, Billy Horschel, Billy Ho, 44-1. He's another one when you look at, the last 36 rounds on comparable courses, he's in the top 10 for it. And I just think that, when you look at the number of Billy Ho, where he is compared to some of the other guys, some nice value there on Billy Horschel. But Webb Simpson, I think at 16-1, still some pretty good value at the number, considering how dominant he's been at this course and in similar courses. I don't mind Kevin Na going back to back, and I'm adding Billy Ho at 44-1 for a bit of a longer shot.
It's good to be talking golf again, isn't it? Like we're just going to be heating things up until we get to the Masters. This is amazing. I love it. It's good. It's Corey Connors, one of my 3 plays. Actually, I have Matt Jones, who you talked about a little bit earlier on with the way that he finished last week. That's one of the reasons that I've got him. He's at 44-1. Mark Leishman, 22-1, 12 for 12 in making the cut at this event. 4 top 10s, 7 top 20s. Finished tied for 10th, I think, last week. Played well last week, has played well at this course multiple times, but he has never won despite making the cut 12 times. So Leishman at 22-1. You mentioned Corey Connors. Look, Corey Connors, he has the power to basically contend in any event. But I think you mentioned it. You look at, par 4 scoring, and this guy's extremely accurate as he works his way in towards the green. So he's 3 for 3 there, made the cut all 3 times, finished 3rd in 2019, was T12 in 2020. So the 2 of the 3 times he's been there, he's been in the top 15, and he's at 25-1. Wouldn't mind seeing the Canadian get started early this year. And then, Matt Jones, 62-61 last week. Are you kidding me? 62-61, which is just insane. He's also been top 20 in this event 3 times, and last year he didn't finish anywhere better than he finished here. He was T11 last year at this event. It's his personal best. So, 44-1. I kind of looked at guys that were coming in a little bit hot, and I don't know many guys coming in hotter than shooting 62-61 just last weekend.
Yeah, it's a great point. And according to Data Golf, Wile is second only to Augusta in terms of predictive course history. So looking back at the course history here and the comparable courses, and you've got it. I mean, Leishman and Corey Connors are both in the top 10 in this event. And I will say the one guy that I was going to pick, I love the guy, and this would be certainly a spot that I would normally put him in, is Kevin Kisner. But Kiz is off the card right now because Kiz is a former Georgia Bulldog, a huge Georgia guy. I think Kiz is going to be trash for the next 3 days after winning the national championship last night. So he'll probably show up. He'll get a check. I don't know whether he's going to be in the condition that it's going to take to put 4 straight rounds together. Kiz, I will be with you on some other courses later on this season, but I'm leaving you off, and I hope you go and party your ass off for the next few days because your Bulldogs won the title.
All right, if the lock shop's going to open with a win at the Sony Open, we need Webb Simpson, Kevin Knott, Billy Horschel, Leishman, Connors, or Matt Jones. Let's start the season right, Huss. That would be great.
Well, we finished off last season really well. I mean, kind of like...
Yeah, we were hitting winners last year.
You know what? We had a really nice end. I think we maybe went 3 of the last 4 or 5 tournaments where one of us had the winner. So we'll see what happens. I'm just pumped that golf is back. It's why I love doing the Tuesday shows. We have a little bit more time to get into the upcoming tournament, and we're going to need it when football's over in a couple of months. And let's fingers crossed we actually have these hockey games being played, unlike what's been happening all around our country for the last month. We'll see what happens. But one thing we can count on, the NFL will be there and the PGA Tour will be there. Basically, the 2 sports that, regardless of what's happened throughout the entire pandemic, we've been able to sit our ass down on the couch and get into it. And, of course, put a little sprinkle on it over at CoolBet.
What do you got coming up on Winnipeg Sports Talk today, buddy?
Lots of hockey talk. I mean, we're going to get into the latest with the Winnipeg Jets, with what's happening with 4 more players going on the COVID list today. Murat Atesh is going to join us. Going to check in with our old pal, JP Vijay, former Atlanta Thrasher, who is going to talk about the Jets, sort of what he's seen so far going from Maurice to Dave Lowry, as well as, what it's like for a guy, a bubble NHL player, to be dealing with what's happening in the league and the opportunities that sometimes come far quicker than many other players. And Dennis Bernstein from the 4th period is going to come on. Have a feeling we'll get in to talk about one of the favorite topics here in Winnipeg, the natural, Evander Kane, who, well, we'll see. So what's the
any advice for us here in Edmonton, Huss? Like, any advice for us? Yeah.
Buyer beware.
That's simple, eh?
There's the advice. Well, the funniest thing, I did see many top contending teams are doing their due diligence on Evander Kane. And part of that due diligence is reaching out to former teammates. I'm like, that's not good for Evander. That's like, the thing is, it ended up disastrously here in Winnipeg. And you would have thought there's no way a guy could end his tenure with the team worse than it happened here in the Peg. Well, Vander said, hold my beer, and we're seeing what's happened. I mean, a historic blow up in San Jose, and the potential that he screwed himself out of $22 million. We'll see what that happens. And people sort of cite those things, but I don't think there's not a lot of glowing reference letters coming out of upstate New York as well for Mr. Kane. So listen, I'll tell you what, I think teams that do it will either be one of these 2: completely desperate, and I would put the Oilers in that category, or very good teams with incredible locker rooms, established leadership, a winning pedigree, that, would take a chance on him, knowing that if at any moment they don't like what he's doing or how he's interacting with guys, they can just say, get the hell out of here. And it's low risk on it.
Washington, Pittsburgh, Tampa.
Yeah,
essentially,
pretty
right?
much.
Like, yeah.
I mean, I would think, pretty much Tampa. I mean, to me, that would be just the ultimate Tampa move too.
Most Tampa thing ever.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get Kane in on half a season on a league min deal to come in, win us another cup, and we'll try and do a big character makeover for Evander Kane right now and go forward to it. Hey, listen, the guy's a hell of a hockey player, and it's in all seriousness, it's sad what has happened to him, because he has the ability of being one of the best players in the league, and to see all the missteps that he's made off the ice, to see the way he's rubbed and burned so many people, it's kind of a tragic story. And there is part of me that would love to see him get an opportunity and to smarten up for once and make the most of it. But unfortunately, with the bankruptcy and potentially screwing himself out of $22 million, I don't know what the future holds for Evander. But if he does get another chance, I think it's pretty much safe to say it'll be his last one in the NHL. So we better figure it out and make the most of it.
Winnipeg Sports Talk today with Hustler. I'll be back with the Nielsen Show tomorrow morning on TSN 1260. We'll have another episode of The Lock Shop on Friday, 11 o'clock Edmonton time, noon for us, as we get you set for playoff action. Super wild card weekend.
6 games. We've got 2 on Monday, 3 on Sunday, and a Monday nighter between the Rams and Cardinals. I'm already all over these numbers, Dusty. I cannot wait. Oh, and we'll have to, in the meantime, figure out our little competition between you, yourself, and Chris. Maybe a little internal wager or something like that on who can have the best record against the spread in the playoffs beginning on Sunday right through to the big game.
We'll talk to you on Friday, buddy. Have a good week.
Right on, man.